So in the last episode, we spoke about Yi Yin, the first Grand Councilor in Chinese history, or the first Prime Minister in Chinese history. We spoke of his birth, his fantastical legend about his birth, and his how he came to the attention of Shang Tang and how he finally joined the inner circles of governance in the Shang Court. And in today's episode, we are going to expand a bit more on how he helped Shang Tang build the Shang Dynasty and what were his other achievements in life, and why even Sun Tzu referenced Yi Yin in his Art of War. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Apingo and I am the Chain Smoking Writer. Here we share the myths, legends and histories of the Chinese people, from the first creator to the last imperial dynasty. More than 6,000 years of stories, one video at a time. And if you would like to join us on this journey through time, remember, a thumb for the video and a sub for the channel to be notified whenever a new video drops. And now, on to the story. So in the episode about Shang Tang, here's the link, here's the card, so yeah, you can check it out. We know that Shang Tang was captured and thrown into a dungeon by the tyrant Jie, and Yi Yin went to his rescue. So in today's episode, we are going to kind of pick up from there, from Yi Yin's POV, point of view. So after Yi Yin rescued Shang Tang from the tyrant's dungeons, they actually orchestrated a ruse to send Yi Yin back into the Xia court as a spy. Now, Tang, after going back to Shang lands, he concocted various made-up crimes and accusations and leveled them against Yi Yin, and then used them as excuses to try to have Yi Yin killed. It was said that Tang even personally led a team to chase down Yi Yin as he was escaping Shang lands, and Tang even shot arrows at Yi Yin to fully flesh out this illusion of the two of them falling out with each other. Now, when Yi Yin arrived at the Xia capital at Zhenxun, his talents greatly impressed the courtiers and the people around, and it quickly earned him a place within the Xia government. He used this opportunity and his position in the Xia government now to scout out the landscape around the capital and to map out the capital itself. And he also, of course, used the opportunity to build relationships with Xia officials and, spread rumors and tales and encourage them to defect to the Shang clan. And it is highly possible that Zhonggu, okay, if you want to know about Zhonggu, here's another cut. It is highly possible that Zhonggu's fantastical escape from the Xia capital with all the documents and all the maps was actually facilitated by Yi Yin himself as well. Now, apart from court officials, Yi Yin managed to bribe also one very important person in the tyrant's inner circle. Now, as we all know, Meisi was Jie's favorite concubine, the tyrant's favorite concubine. He spared no expenses in his efforts just to see her smile. I mean, remember the story about him cutting in hundreds and thousands of bales of silk just to have maidens tear it in front of Meisi because she loved the sound of silk tearing. Yeah, if you don't, here's the cut to that video as well. So yeah, as we know, Jie would spare no expenses just to see her smile. However, as Meisi grew older and lost the beauty of her youth, Jie gradually lost interest in her, which was expectable. And just so happened at the same time when Jie launched an invasion into the Minshan clan, their chief used the same tactics as Meisi's old clan chief and offered up two beautiful girls as gifts to the tyrant. And these girls were named Wan and Yan. And they were young, they were pretty. I don't know if they are twins, but they were young, they were pretty, and they were known to be so light on their feet that they moved and they walked around like they were gliding on water. And they had it was said that they had, singing voices that were so sweet that they rivaled the most melodious singing birds. And of course, Jie was immediately smitten by his new acquisitions and spent all his time with them, totally forgetting Meisi. And of course, Meisi stewed in her own vat of jealousy and vowed revenge for this insult and this neglect that she is feeling right now. So just so happens when she's stewing in her own jealousy, Yi Yin arrived in the Xia court and he made use of this jealousy to turn her into his informant, and thereby gaining access to confidential information of the Xia court. Now, apparently Yi Yin actually spent 3 years in the Xia court as a spy, and roughly towards the end of his tenure as a spy in the Xia court, there was one occasion that Meisi actually revealed to Yi Yin about a dream that the tyrant Jie had. And apparently in the dream, the tyrant saw 2 suns battling out in the sky, one in the east and one in the west. And in the end, the sun in the east won the battle and destroyed the sun in the west. Now, as the Shang capital was to the east of the Xia capital, Yi Yin explained the dream as an omen of the Shang's victory over the Xia dynasty. And as we all know, this was like, near 2000 BC, 1700, somewhere around there BC, and it was still a very primitive society who still believed in omens and other superstitious beliefs. So, Yi Yin sent this story back to Tang, and Shang Tang used the power of his massive propaganda machine to spread the story and the associated omen and prophecy across the land. So now everyone is thinking like, the East is going to win over the West, the Shang is going to overthrow the Xia. And he made sure that everyone, all the superstitious people of the realm knew of this sign from the heavens, that the Shang will overthrow the corrupted Xia and lead the people to a better future. Now, of course, this greatly increased the morale of the Shang soldiers and the Shang supporters and garnered an even greater base of support from the populace. And, in a way, because this was a sign from the heavens, it also gave Tang the final justification to launch the campaign to overthrow the ruling dynasty, the incumbents, the Xia dynasty. He had received a sign from the heavens to take over as ruler of the land. And due to the years of preparations that Shang Tang has already laid down, and the way that he used this propaganda to win over the hearts and the minds of the people and the leaders of the land, Shang Tang's campaign was a huge success, and he very quickly overthrew the Xia dynasty and established the Shang dynasty in its stead. We will actually go into more detail regarding the campaign and the battle in a future episode, so look out for that. Now, the Yi Yin's exploit in the Xia court as a spy was even mentioned by Sun Tzu in The Art of War to illustrate the importance and the impact of spycraft when it's in a conflict between warring factions. So yeah, that was, I think, one of the early documented case of spycraft being used, between warring factions. And now we know that during the crossover between the Xia dynasty and the Shang dynasty, the roles of the ruler and the prime minister or the grand counselor of the land are beginning to separate from each other. Before that, usually the ruler would do the day-to-day running, set the vision, set the direction, and basically cover everything mostly on himself. But by the time of the early Shang dynasty, the role of the prime minister became more and more solidified. So with the ruler setting the direction and what his vision was, and the prime minister or the grand councilor would take on more and more the responsibilities of the day-to-day running of the realm. And Yi Yin is recognized in Chinese history as the first prime minister or the first grand councilor to wield the full power of the office in the context of Chinese historical dynasties. And in his service to the Shang Court, he was Tang's chief advisor, and he was the one that strategized Shang's rise to power and ultimately helped Shang Tang build the Shang Dynasty upon the ruins of the Xia. And Yi Yin was also credited with enacting the laws and building the institutions of government that governed the Shang Court in the newly established dynasty of the time. And officials were required to be loyal and diligent in their work or face the harsh punishment as laid out by these laws. And Yi Yin also refined criminal law, the criminal code, to lay out the different crimes and their respective punishments in more detail. And he also made sure that everyone understood the consequences and the repercussions of their actions. And as such, the early Shang Dynasty officials were very diligent men who would not even dare to dream of corruption or taking bribes or anything of that sort. Governmental institutions and systems were refined and streamlined, and therefore economical and cultural growth actually rocketed. It grew at a breakneck pace due to the peace and the stability under the early Shang rulers. Now, after Shang Tang, Yi Yin actually went on to serve under the reigns of 3 subsequent Shang kings, namely Wai Ping, Zhongren, and Tai Jia. However, Yi Yin never once abused his power and status, nor did he ever use his seniority to become, like the power behind the throne. He remained always a loyal servant to the court throughout his entire life of service, and thus that was the main reason he was held up throughout Chinese history as the prime example of the ideal court official. No matter how high you rise, no matter how much power and status you enjoy, you never forget that you are a servant of the court and a servant of the ruler. Now, apart from being the ideal example of a court official, Yi Yin also credited with being the inventor or innovator of Chinese pharmaceuticals or decoctions. As we all know today, you might know, you might not know, but traditional Chinese medicine today are basically decoctions of herbal and mineral materials. So before Yi Yin's innovations, the herbs and the minerals which were supposed to be remedies were consumed in their raw form, which caused some problems because raw herbs and materials used as remedies were usually pretty difficult to ingest. I mean, imagine chewing on dried leaves and maybe powdered stone or pearls or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of hard to swallow. So, and secondly, many of these herbs and minerals were actually toxic in nature. So, yeah, your remedy might actually kill you if your disease did not. So that's another issue. So what Yi Yin did was that he used his experience as a top-level chef to make it easier for patients to consume their medicines and their remedies. So what he did was that he would cook the various herbs, the herbal roots, leaves, branches, and maybe minerals in soups to extract the medicinal qualities of these herbs, to extract the medicinal essence into the soups, and then he would reduce these soups into decoctions to aid in consumption. So what happens was that the cooking of these raw ingredients also had the effect of reducing the toxicity in some of these ingredients, and thereby decreasing the chances of patients being poisoned by the remedies instead of dying through the diseases. And so this innovation greatly improved the range of usable applications for herbal remedies, and is still basically used today in traditional Chinese medication, traditional Chinese medicine. And yeah, on a side note, because he was such a great chef, he is also recognized and worshipped in some quarters as the god of the kitchens. So yeah, there you go. So that was the story of Yi Yin, the first Prime Minister or the first Grand Councilor and the prime example of a court official. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it. If you did, remember a thumb for the video and a sub for the channel to be updated whenever a new video drops. And if you would like to support the channel beyond the like and the sub, you can do that on Patreon, on our Patreon page. The links are available here and down in the description box below. All patrons get early access to the videos at least 1 week in advance of everyone else on YouTube, and second tier and above supporters will get a free copy of the ebooks when they are published either by end of the year or Q1 2021 if you are watching this in future. And top tier supporters, of course, they will get a free copy of the physical book if and when it's published. So yeah, click on the link to the Patreon page to find out more, and if you can, it would really help keep the lights on around here. And as usual, I look forward to all your comments, feedbacks and thoughts on the video and the story, and I do personally go through and respond to all of them whenever possible. So yeah, leave your comments down below and I look forward to the banter. So I guess that's it for today, and I will see you in the next episode.